Hello and welcome to this session for the Indie Author Fringe at the Frankfurt Book Fair, hosted by the Alliance of Independent Authors. My name's Adam Croft, I'm an author of crime thrillers and psychological thrillers, and today I'm talking to Darren Hardy, Amazon's UK manager for Kindle Direct Publishing, about how self-publishing authors can use Amazon's powerful platform to their best advantage. Darren, hello.
Hello.
I think first, for the absolute newbies, maybe we can talk a little bit about KDP, what that means, how it works, and how authors can use that for their advantage.
Yes, so KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, is a independent publishing program that helps authors really, I guess, take control of the whole process. It's a really simple sign-up process and a set of tools that enable you to take a finished manuscript, like a Word document, and upload it into the Kindle store as an ebook. We also have a print-on-demand operation, and our sister company Audible has the ACX offering, which enables you to create audiobooks as well. So from an author's perspective, you can publish your book across formats and obviously have them available for customers all around the world.
Okay, I mean, I know within KDP as well, there are two ways of doing things. There's the KDP Select option and there's the outside of Select. I mean, maybe if we can talk a little bit about what that means in terms of the exclusivity deals, the advantages, disadvantages for people either going through Select or not.
Yeah. So obviously Kindle Direct Publishing is this broad program that any author can sign up to, and it's sort of fairly standard terms and conditions. Authors retain the complete rights, flexibility to update their publishing anytime they like. As an entirely sort of optional program, we offer KDP Select, and so in return for a 90-day period of exclusivity, authors have access to a variety of marketing programs, promotional programs. So, for example, titles are included in Kindle Unlimited, our subscription program for readers that subscribe to KU. And authors also have access to countdown deals, which is a really nice tool that enables you to create a little bit of a buzz around price promotion. So what you can do, for example, is price promote your title to a particular level, and the system will count down to that deal expiring. So if a customer finds your book on the website, there's a real sort of sense of get this book at this price while you can, sort of thing. That will then authors have the flexibility of having a number of steps to that process. So you could, for example, go down £2 and then after a week come up to a £1 offering. So you can play around with it as an author and decide which route works for you. Similarly, enrolling your title in Select it provides access to a number of free days. So essentially for a number of days across the 90-day period, you can make your book available for free. And that's a great, many authors have commented on the way that this sort of encourages customers to try a title. If perhaps they haven't heard of the author before, or it's a new genre for them, the fact it's on free for a limited time sort of encourages people to give it a go. So there's some of the benefits. The great thing is it's a 90-day period, but at the end of that period, it's entirely down to the author whether they enroll again. You can enroll one or all of your titles as an author. It's entirely down to you to choose the method that works best. And I think for many of the authors that I speak to, it's really a sort of something to experiment with. It's not necessarily for everybody. Some authors, if they would like to sort of focus on a different way of promoting their titles, they can go down that route. But many of the authors I speak to talk about the fact that KDP Select is a great tool, a great way of sort of building momentum and hopefully some exposure with readers.
Yeah, I mean, I've used KDP Select in the past. I don't at the moment for most of my books, although I have a Kindle single out at the moment, which is currently in Select. And what's quite interesting for me is the Kindle Unlimited side of things and the Kindle Owners Lending Library. Get that right? I think I've got it right. and how that works, because that's quite an interesting model. It's for me, it kind of it's similar to what Spotify do for music and what have you, in terms of being able to pay a monthly subscription or have it included with your Amazon Prime subscription, and to be able to borrow books within that subscription. Is that the kind of the way you see things going, perhaps?
It's slightly different to that, actually. Kindle Unlimited is entirely separate to Prime subscription, so they're two entirely different things. You can be a Prime member and not enroll in Kindle Unlimited, and vice versa. And I mean, the great thing about Kindle Unlimited is it's really sort of designed for heavy book buyers who read a lot of books and want a great selection that they can just access quickly and easily in return for their subscription. It's still relatively early days for Kindle Unlimited in the UK, but I think already, certainly what I'm hearing is a lot of authors finding that it's a great way of discovering new readers. Again, like we were talking about with the free promotional days, it's a way for readers to sort of try a title at relatively low risk. You know, they're paying their monthly subscription, they're out there looking for titles to read. And I think also it's a great way of sort of almost like following a breadcrumb trail, I suppose. You try one author, you really like that genre, maybe a new genre for you, and you can then use your subscription to try and find new authors within that genre. So it's working really well. Certainly the customer reaction to it has been incredibly positive, and authors, I've really enjoyed the fact that it's another way of marketing their titles, of discovering new readers. I think there are still authors who are trying different ways of doing it. You know, do you put all of your titles in, a little bit like you're saying, you know, with Select? You can experiment with it. It may be something where you want to put first titles in a series in there. The authors that I've spoken to have sort of just really gone for it, and I found it a really great marketing tool across their whole list. But you know, authors have the choice. You know, as part of your KDP Select membership, you can choose what you put in there.
Okay, so do you see it more then, I think, from what you're saying, as perhaps a great way if you're perhaps launching a new series, or if you're perhaps towards the beginning of your career, in terms of being able to find new readers and to get that early promotion? I mean, what kind of percentages of KDP authors are in Select?
Yeah, I don't think authors really see it in exactly those ways. I think, you know, when you look at what's in Kindle Unlimited, there are some very well-established authors in there. I think it's a real mix. You know, I guess every author is looking for new readers, you know, and given that it has been such a successful program, there are many new readers who are signed up and looking for new titles to discover. So I think it's not really, I wouldn't really want to sort of specifically characterize it as a new author program, no, or a program for authors with one title or many titles. I think the key thing is it's building some great momentum for people that want to read, you know. And obviously if you're a customer paying your $7.99 subscription, you want to get your value for money out of it. So you're looking to read new titles and to find books in the program to read. So I think from that point of view, it can appeal to authors across the sort of the spectrum. So I think it's something which, as I say, is in early stages. All the signs are sort of really encouraging. So I think I just encourage or looking at it for the first time to have a read through, to have a look at what customers are saying about it, and make a choice that works for them.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there with when you're saying about customers wanting to get value for money, and that's something that obviously authors are always looking at from this point of view, in terms of making sure people are getting value for money. Also, you know, obviously trying to maximize our profits and maximize our income as authors, as anyone would expect us to do. I mean, in terms of pricing, that's a big subject in the industry anyway. What do you see as being kind of optimum prices in terms of different genres? Do you think different genres perhaps have an expectancy with their readers of having a lower price point and some a higher price point? What are your views on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I mean, we hear from authors all the time who are constantly experimenting with pricing, and you hear that sort of discussion around running deals, running free promo days. You know, do you run campaigns in line with the sort of seasonal retail calendar? Some are reading, you know, Christmas reading, those kind of things. I think there is a sort of a single hard and fast rule that works. I've heard from many authors that have tried, you know, to price under the genre average, or who maybe want to go a little bit higher because they want to maximize the revenue from their units. Again, I think authors can choose what works best for them. I think the advice I often hear is that authors will spend quite a lot of time looking at what the other authors in their genre are doing. You know, I think clearly when you look at across fiction, for example, you know, there are many titles within a particular genre that have a particular style to the cover design, for example, that have a particular way of writing product descriptions. And I think pricing is a part of that. You know, it's part of what are the other authors in your area doing, because that will sort of set a certain expectation. information. What are the best-selling titles in your genre doing? Because clearly, if they're selling well, they're at the price point that readers are comfortable with, or if they're doing particularly well in Kindle Unlimited, for example, the cover design and those kind of things is working for them. And then sort of reflect on what your priorities are as an individual author. We do have some tools that we're still trying to develop to help in this area. So in the US, for example, if you're publishing your titles into the US marketplace on KDP, there is a pricing tool which is currently in beta. So it's just a sort of tester at the moment. And what we do is we try and look at all of the titles in the genre that you're publishing with a similar sort of page count, those kind of things, and work out from all of those titles what is a sort of a revenue maximizing price. And the tool will offer a graph that shows you the sort of curve that helps authors make decisions. It's certainly not there as any way of sort of trying to prescribe anything, but it's a sort of an input, I suppose, for authors to then decide what works best for them. But I think pricing, it's a constantly moving area, and you get seasonality to it, you get differences in terms of where you are in your publishing cycle. So I think it's something that authors, it's well worth spending some time to think about what works best for you.
And the pricing tool that you mentioned there is something I've seen and used and is quite handy. I mean, I know you touched briefly on what goes into that algorithm, if you like, in terms of the page count, the genre it's in. What else is included there? I mean, does it take into account, for example, the relative success of other books? Is it sort of weighted towards the bestsellers, or is it just a kind of an average across the genre?
That's a very good question. I don't know the exact answer to that. I would expect that in most cases, when we're looking at sort of trying to draw inferences from the data that we see, that we will try and sort of weight it across the bestsellers. But I couldn't guarantee that for certain. I need to get back to you on that.
Okay. I mean, in terms of, I suppose, the marketing aspects, which is what most people watching this are probably going to be keen on, in terms of how they can sell more books through Amazon, get more attention as well, and find new readers. In terms of doing that within the KDP platform itself, and being able to take advantage of the way Amazon ranks books, and what's often referred to as kind of tickling the algorithm. I wonder if maybe we can touch a bit on that and try and get to the bottom, perhaps, of some ways in which authors can essentially give readers what they want and give Amazon what they want, and get that exposure in return.
Yes, I mean, that's the holy grail, isn't it, in terms of discovery and finding new readers. Many authors have told me about the kind of things that they've tried. It's definitely worth focusing on the basics. It seems a little bit obvious, but making sure that you've got a really strong product page, for example, a really good, tight product description, a cover design that really works online. It's surprising how often people can sometimes forget that the cover design they look at on a monitor screen is going to get shrunk down to the size of a thumbnail on a website. And if you really want your readers who see the cover design sort of pop up on a screen really engage with them, it's got to sort of work at that kind of level. And I think it's also really well worth reflecting on. We talked about KDP Select, whether that's the right sort of tool for you, making sure that you're really sort of setting out your stall as effectively as you can. So every point on the Amazon website, for example, that your customers may discover you is as strong as it can be. So we talked about the product page, but is the author page fully up to date, for example? Do you have a up-to-date photograph, an engaging biography? Is your bibliography fully up to date on the author page? And you can open an Author Central account to help you manage all of those kind of things. We recently launched a feature called Follow, where when you go onto an author page, there's a little button appears under the author's photograph that customers can click to essentially sort of follow that author. And that's sort of a way for customers to register the fact that this author is of particular interest to them and they'd like to hear more about them. So you can see why the author page would be important for that. You want to arrive on the author page, there's this follow button there if you're really engaged. So if you've got a great photograph, great biography, it's going to sort of increase your chances of sort of getting that level of engagement. And I think the other thing to to bear in mind as well. Many authors mention, there's that temptation to think of the publication process as the sort of end of the cycle. You've got your book out there, you've published it, great. There's a huge sense of relief having done so. But in many ways, that's sort of like the start of the process. It's then how do you engage with your readers? And you've got to think about that broad range of tools that are at your disposal. Some of them are on Amazon, some of them are sort of Amazon specific, but there's also things to consider in terms of social media. Do you want a reader-facing Facebook page? Do you want to engage with your readers at that sort of level? Do you have a mailing list? I don't know if you've featured Mark Dawson before, but he talks incredibly and powerfully about the amount of time and effort he spent developing a mailing list, developing ways in which he can sort of engage his readers. And you hear about that in so many different contexts, authors that have really taken that on and enjoy it. I mean, there's always the balance to be struck between the creative side of things, the writing, and the business side of things, if I can put it that way. But if you really want to get out there and engage, there's a huge number of options that enable you to do so. And all of that feeds into the success of your books. The more people, for example, talking about them on Facebook or on Goodreads, the more chance you've got of those customers, readers going onto Amazon and looking at those titles and then hopefully buying them. So it's well worth sort of thinking about that broad range in the armory, as it were, and then working out as an author which elements suit you and which elements you're comfortable with. Because, as an independent author, you get that choice. Nobody's telling you you have to do any of these things. You've got the option, and you sort of find the combination of options that work best for you.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that. I think a mailing list is absolutely vital. Facebook is great as well, having a Facebook page there, and even things like Facebook advertising. You mentioned Mark Dawson there, who's somebody I know, and I've done pretty well on Facebook advertising myself, so I can definitely second that. In terms of something I did want to ask about myself personally is the Amazon rankings for books. I mean, obviously, sales influence the ranking, but I'm always interested in how much the ranking influences the sales, how many customers kind of go through the charts, and whether that increased visibility is really something that should be aimed for, whether the rank matters that much, and not just being a reflection of sales, but being a driver of sales as well.
Well, of course, I mean, the Amazon website, not just for books, but across the entire sort of catalogue, is all driven by what customers enjoy, what's selling well, and how we can then use that to recommend to sort of similar customers their next purchase, their next read. So, I mean, sales rank is clearly a big driver of that. And I think also, similar as we talk about how authors want to sort of market themselves and discover new readers, I think readers are doing exactly the same thing. How do they find new authors? And you instantly see on the website sort of customers using the charts, using recommendations, using the sort of browse structure. Say, well, I've discovered this new book. It's in this category that I'd never really understood before. But what else can I find in that area? And sort of through the sort of bibliography, drilling through the sort of browse structure. So, and all of that, many of those things are driven by bestsellers, are driven by what customers are actually buying. So, you're right. I mean, it's sort of a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, I suppose. Great sales ranking will drive great visibility, and the more you can do to turn that flywheel, the better. The great thing about the Amazon website from that perspective is it's entirely democratic. It is just reflecting what customers are doing, and so every author stands equal chances of getting out there and being discovered. But the more you can do to sort of get that motor turning, the better, I think.
Okay, I mean, authors are always looking to try and find out what the next big thing is going to be. And one thing that I've noticed myself is a kind of move towards more international sales. I mean, traditionally it's been US, it's been UK. I just wondered what you think from Amazon's point of view, the way things are going there, because I've noticed myself there seems to have been kind of strides being made into Germany, for example, from Amazon's point of view. So I just wondered what what kind of developments are being made there, particularly with Kindle, in terms of kind of spreading out into different territories, and how authors can take advantage of that and drive those international sales a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about Kindle Direct Publishing is you get complete flexibility in terms of the international element of it. So as you're enrolling your title, you get you go through the pricing and rights process. You get the option of sort of identifying which countries you want to sell in or which countries you don't. For example, if you've sold your rights in France to a publisher, you may want to sort of switch that particular territory out. I think the great thing about it is that, certainly from the authors I've spoken to, is it's surprising the sales that you can find internationally. I think it's one of those things where often, I think as an author, you tend to think about your own country, or potentially, as you say, you might think about the US if you're an author in the UK, because there's a natural sort of language opportunity there. But don't underestimate the opportunity of selling in English in any country around the world. There's lots of people looking to learn English. There are lots of English speakers in countries all around the world, and so why limit your chances? So I think I think my advice would always be, open your marketplace as broadly as you can, and if you're able to, switch on all of those countries and have your titles available in Japan, have your titles available in India, Australia, Africa, all those places, because it's only additional sales if there are customers out there looking to buy. So I don't think there are any sort of real new developments in terms of the tools that we're offering in those kind of areas. I think maybe the opportunity is authors who are now, many independent authors setting up very successful businesses and treating them as a sort of a brand that they can develop, is just thinking, what are the opportunities elsewhere in the world?
Okay, and I want to talk a bit about the curated imprints, if you like, that Amazon has in terms of Kindle Singles, Kindle Scouts, perhaps how independent authors can use those as well, and what impact and what connection they have with KDP and self-published titles. I know from personal experience, Kindle Singles is tied in quite heavily with the KDP platform as well. So I just wanted to kind of speak more about what those are as well, for people who don't know about them, how authors can get involved with those, and what they might offer, and how they might help to potentially draw new readers in, or to access other readers and markets that they wouldn't do through self-publishing alone.
Yeah, so I mean, they're both entirely separate to Kindle Direct Publishing, so it's worth bearing in mind, as you say. I mean, we know that Amazon Publishing, for example, they as a publisher will be very interested in authors that are selling particularly well. They'll be very interested in our charts to see which authors are doing well on any particular week, and so that can then feed into the discussion around something like Kindle Singles. Kindle Singles, the idea of that is really it's a curated published list, acting as a publisher, really for titles sort of in their natural shape. So somewhere between a sort of a magazine article, but sort of shorter than a full-blown novel. And it's really trying to find really interesting content that's going to resonate with Amazon customers. In some instances, sort of like non-fiction writing, but also sort of novellas and a sort of shorter form fiction. And that is a curated list. Has an editor who will be looking for opportunities. He will be looking out in the marketplace to see what's selling well, and then sort of reaching out to authors to invite them to participate. So it's sort of acting as a traditional publisher, as it were, but in a very specific type of sort of content form, I suppose. Kindle Scout is different again, and that's really more around using almost crowdsourcing, I suppose, in terms of authors being able to sort of provide a synopsis, provide sort of outline in terms of the book they're looking to write and publish, and having people sort of really engage with that and say, yeah, this is the one that we particularly like, and then for that to be taken on almost as a sort of like a published title as well. So they're not sort of independent publishing in the way that it means on Kindle Direct Publishing. They're just new ways, additional ways in which authors can find new readers, they can experiment with their writing and try things in new ways. I think how it does overlap is often you will find authors trying all of these things, and pitching for all of those things when it comes to sort of the traditional publishing model. I think the old idea of being one or the other, you are either a traditional author with a traditional contract, or you're an independent author who only publishes indie. It's much more dynamic than that, I think, and really authors have the opportunity of sort of trying all of those things and experimenting with them. I think the great thing is independent publishing, KDP, enables you to sort of get on with it now. If you've got a book that you're ready to go, then just get it up there. And who knows, as we know, there are publishers looking at those lists. They may be interested in taking an author on. Many independent authors I talk to say, actually, no, they're quite enjoying the journey themselves. They've got all of that flexibility on Kindle Direct Publishing, so they will just carry on as they are.
And that's something I've had a lot of experience with myself recently. I'm really enjoying trying these different avenues. Obviously, I've been completely self-published for a number of years, and recently going with Amazon Publishing for a couple of titles, and Kindle singles as well, and just trying these different areas. And they are different experiences, they're different platforms, and it's really interesting to see how you can find different readers and different exposure on these different platforms that are all kind of separate but still linked as well to each other. That's always a lot of fun.
That's a great reader point of view. You're looking for a great story, you know, and whether it may be that you want a Kindle single when you're on the train and you want something a little bit shorter, you know, but it's always about what's new, what's next. And I think it, as you say, sort of adds to the opportunities for authors to experiment and try something different.
Yeah, I mean, you preempted my next question there with what's new, what's next. And that's exactly where I was going. In terms of what we can expect to see from Kindle Direct Publishing, and from, you know, for indie authors in general, where do you see things moving industry-wise, and what can independent authors do to kind of get ahead of the game a little bit and try and get one step ahead?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's a great question, and one that I think authors are asking each other all the time. We're often being asked. I think in terms of recent developments, the Amazon Follow button, I think, has been a really interesting launch. It's only a few weeks old in the UK, and I think it's definitely well worth thinking for authors to think about how they can use that, you know, as a call to action. And so even if a reader has bought all of your books, they can still follow you on Amazon, and that sort of opens the door to that reader to find out about the next title and you know, other similar sorts of titles that are coming out. We recently launched a feature called Kindle Instant Preview, which is a great tool for authors, especially if you run, you have your own website where maybe you blog about titles, or you put up information about your new titles. Kindle Instant Preview it enables you to embed the Kindle sample onto your website. So it means if somebody is, let's say, reading a blog that you've written about your new book, a sample can pop up on your website. So it means the customer doesn't have to sort of leave the author's website, go to Amazon, and then come back again. It just pops up there to enable them to actually read a little bit more, so they can read the Kindle sample. If they want to purchase, they can then go through and make a purchase, and the author can potentially earn a commission on that sale, or they can simply switch it off and go back to reading the blog. You know, but it's a great way of sort of integrating that experience, which from a reader point of view makes it really seamless, rather than sort of having to, you know, write down the title, think, oh, I must go off and, you know, visit the Amazon website to buy that. So that's a really useful feature. I think in terms of what's coming up, I mean, it's always hard to second guess, you know, what readers and authors are going to be doing. I think the great thing that we're seeing even more of is authors really treating this as a business, you know, that they're really enjoying getting involved in all aspects of it. So you hear from authors like Mark Dawson and Rachel Abbott and so many others who are building teams around them. You know, they're hiring cover designers, they're hiring editors, they're you know, flexing the cover design according to the genre that they want to publish in. They're hiring PR people to help them sort of get a exposure in the social media space, for example, or engage with journalists. And I think we'll see a lot more of that. You know, independent authors are becoming more and more successful. And it's not necessarily about becoming a million-copy bestseller, and maybe that's not necessarily, you know, sort of the end goal that you're trying to get to. It may just be you want to be successful, you want to earn a living, and being able to sort of hire those people around you to help you, I think, is something that authors are becoming more and more aware of. And I think the great thing as well is incredibly generous in terms of sharing ideas about, you know, here's an editor you should go and see, or here's a cover designer who worked really well for me. And I think that's sort of taking ownership, taking control of your destiny as a business person that is publishing books and running a business is something that I think we'll see even more of in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating time. It's a fantastic time to be a writer as well, and you know, the way that Amazon focuses on the reader experience, the customer experience, as you say, and also on that experience for the author is revolutionary, really, and it's something that I'm really enjoying my journey on as well. Even, you know, 6 years on, it's still very enjoyable. Well, thank you, Darren. It's been fantastic talking to you, and
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you.